Hi there. So today we're going to I'm going to show you how to do a blind hem. So it looks like this. This is what it looks like when you buy it at the store. You can see that um, there's not like a seam. Like right here, you see the seam. Right here, you can kind of see it because it's been pressed there, but it's pretty much invisible. On the inside, it looks like this, and it's been serged. So they've made the seam, they've made the hem with a machine, but not everybody has a serger. I don't have a serger, not anymore. Mine's broken. So I have to do it by hand. And when you have slacks or dress pants, you want this. It looks a lot more professional. It's very clean, and so these particular pants are work pants for a friend of mine, and he's buys them a little bit long because they're easier to find, and so I had to cut them off so that he could wear them without them bunching up around his feet or tripping over them or whatnot. So what I need to do is create a blind hem here so that the pants will be the right length and still look nice and professional and clean like this one. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to need is obviously the garment that you're going to be adjusting, some pins, some straight pins, needle and thread. You want thread that's going to match whatever fabric you're using. In this case, it's black, so it's pretty easy. Since the blind hem is pretty close to invisible, it doesn't have to be exactly the same color, but just in case you go a little wide on one of the stitches, you want to go ahead and make sure you get the same color. And then of course a pair of scissors. We're not going to do much. Obviously, I cut off the amount that I needed to get rid of, and then also an iron to press the edges. So just a reminder that when you're cutting off the length that you want, you need to account for whatever amount you're going to have to fold up in order to make the seam or make the hem. In this case, when you're making a blind hem, you have to be able to double it over. Which I'm going to explain here in a second. So if you needed to cut off, let's say, for instance, these are 30-inch pants, and my friend, just for an example, I didn't actually measure, but let's say he needed to go down to 28 inches, you wouldn't just cut off 2 inches. If you cut off 2 inches, then you would end up too short because you still have to fold it over, and sew. So you would lose a whole inch, or pretty close to an inch, depending on how much you folded it over, in order to get the nice edge. Then you would end up with 27-inch pants instead of 28-inch pants. So make sure whatever you cut off, you add back in whatever you're going to sew up, fold up to make the hem, and then cut. And the most important lesson is to measure twice and cut once. Obviously, I can't put fabric back. Funny story in this case, these pants I might have cut off too much because I used as a pattern a piece from another pair of pants that I cut for him, or that I sewed for him, and these I'm thinking might be shorter pants, and I didn't realize until I'd already cut these ones off. So I'm going to make a very small, as small as I can, hem on these ones, but generally your blind hem is going to be pretty big. I actually don't know why, but it's just maybe to give a little weight to the edge of it so it'll lay straight and flat. Let me pull those pants out again. As you can see here, this one's like a little over an inch wide, so it's pretty wide. But I'm not sure exactly what the thought process is on that. But in my experience, what I've seen is blind hems tend to be a little bit wider. But in this case, because I did cut off so much, I am going to make it as small as I possibly can and still have a nice clean hem. So the first thing that I have to do on this one is fold over what I'm going to, what I need to fold, and iron it just to create a little bit of a crease, a little bit of a, when you iron it and create that crease, what happens is it kind of stays for you and you don't have to work so hard. I know that sounds kind of weird, but that really is the only reason to do something like that. So you can see here, I'm just going to fold it over, in this case about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to just iron it down. And I'm going to do it all the way around eventually. But for this part, I'm just going to do that piece right there just so you can see what it looks like. Make sure your iron is set to the temperature that's good for your garment or your fabric. Sometimes, especially non-natural materials can be very heat sensitive and can scorch and warp and get kind of this glossy look, and it's no bueno. You don't want to do that. So make sure you're using the right temperature. If it's not quite working, another thing I do is if I need it to be hotter and that fabric is a little bit sensitive, what I'll do is I'll take a pillowcase, like in this instance I have this pillowcase, and I'll put it over the top of the fabric, and then I'll iron over the top of that. So I get the heat on it, but I'm not having any metal to fabric contact, which reduces some of the scorching that might happen. All right, so the reason why we want to double it over, so here you can see I only folded it once, but if I was to leave it like this, see how there's this fraying here on this particular fabric? This fabric will make these little strings come out. So if you just were to fold it up one time, those strings would still be just hanging out there. So you want to fold it a second time in order to hide them underneath there and then sew. When you're using a serger, it takes out that necessity, because it binds the edge as well as sewing it. And then when you're doing a hidden hem like we are, or blind hem like we are, it'll just every once in a while it'll go through the other side of the fabric, the front, the one that's on the outside. And so that's how serger makes a blind hem, and also makes it clean and can use a lot less fabric. But when you do it manually, like we're going to do right now, or by hand, you have to do it with doubling it over. Now, if you have a fabric that doesn't have that fraying, it's not very common probably in fabrics that are going to be used for pants or dress slacks, then you don't have to do that. You could cheat it and just do it one time, but I think it looks cleaner regardless. But if you're short on fabric and you need to just do it the one time, that's cool too. So there is some products out there you might have seen before. It's called hem tape. There's a lot of different brands. What you can do is it's a little piece of tape, and it looks just like double-sided tape or just like any kind of tape. You set it down there, and then you fold this over on top of it so that the hem tape is in between the two layers of fabric, and then you iron over the top of it, and it holds it in place, and you don't have to do any sewing. I personally don't find those products to be they don't hold up in my experience. But if I need to do something quick, it's certainly worthwhile to try that product and do it faster, do it that way. But like I said, this one, doing it this way has a couple of advantages. Number one, it looks very clean, it's very secure, but also it's reversible. And that sounds weird, but when we're doing a blind stitch, as you can see from the example, since it doesn't come through, it's not damaging this outside piece of part of the fabric. So if I was to unsew this, if I was to rip out this stitching and make it longer or shorter and re-sew it, then you wouldn't even be able to tell, unless these pants had been worn like a lot of times, and this edge right here, the edge of the fabric had started to wear. You wouldn't even be able to tell that I ever did that if you made them longer anyways. If you made them shorter, you wouldn't be able to tell at all. So that's one nice thing about the blind hem too, is if I mess it up, no big deal, it doesn't hurt the fabric. Whereas if you use the hem tape, I don't know, it might leave it might leave some of the adhesive on there. It might not even come apart. I don't really know. I've never tried to take one apart before. So let me go ahead and iron this down. I'm just going to flip it all the way around so I can do the entire pant leg. One difficult thing about doing a pant leg is it is in a circle. It is round, and it is more challenging to, you have to be a little bit more dexterous to do it. I want to make sure it's the same length all the way around. One way to do that is to make sure to line up the seams. So if you can see here, the side seam that was coming down the fabric, when you fold it over, you can still see the side seam. I just make sure to line them up. And same with this one, was already pleated, or it was already ironed with this nice little pleat in place, and so I can line those up as well. So, and I want to do that on both sides, make sure it's nice and long. You can see all those strings that we're going to hide here in just a few minutes when we sew it. So let's go ahead and iron that down so we have a nice hold there. It doesn't have to be perfect. All we're doing is creating a little bit of making the fabric think that it's being held. All right, so like I said, we have to fold it over again to hide all this fraying, to protect the edge of the fabric so that it doesn't continue to fray, and just to give it a nice clean look. So we're going to fold it over a second time, and we're going to pin it in place. So this is where we're going to use the straight pins. So here we're going to just take a straight pin. We folded it over. I matched up the two seams, and I'm going to stick a pin in there, and then I'm just going to do that all the way around. I like to match up my 4 pieces first, my 4 places, the inside seam, the outside seam, and the 2 pleats where it was ironed or pressed in place. So we're just going to go all the way around, and you can see that each of the, as you go around, it should be the same width. This folding over piece, this part of the fabric that's folded over, should be the same width all the way around. Oh, look at that, it's all fat. That's because I need to go this way and refold it. I wasn't super careful with the iron because I was trying to be quick, so this video isn't an hour long. I'm going to stuff all that fraying in there, and you could cut it off, but it's just going to keep fraying, so I just leave it in there and then stuff it in there. And once you sew it, it'll definitely stay in there. It won't come out. All right, so it's all in there, and it's folded over. Oopsie, I missed it on that one. So let's try it again. Fold it over again. So that's what happens when you don't iron very well, is that it doesn't want to stay in place for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the iron again, and I'm going to I'm not going to go over the pins, but I'm just going to, again, just give it a little pretend security here by pressing it down, and then it wants to stay there without me having to fight with it when I start to sew. So let me just do it all again, especially this side where I didn't get too much heat when I was ironing it before. I'm just going to press it down with the pins. I think that's pretty good. All right, so what we have here is our prep. We're ready to go to make the hem. So you can see here, it's nice and clean on this side, and all we're gonna see eventually is just that those some tiny little dots when we're gonna make the seam, and then this is how it's gonna look on the inside, except for with some diagonal stitching. So you can see it's nice and clean. So the next thing we're gonna do is get our thread. So let's go ahead and get our needle and thread. Okay, so I have black thread. When I'm doing this kind of sewing, I just use a general needle. I buy a pack of generic, random sizes, whatnot, general sewing needles. There are lots of different needles for lots of different types of projects, quilting, embroidery, cross stitching. Generally, the sewing needles that you use for just general sewing projects are going to be pretty thin. They're going to be much pointier, like a sewing, an embroidery and a cross stitch needle. Generally a little bit more blunt at the end. These ones are a little bit thinner and pokier. I like a longer needle just to have somewhere to hold. And then I take my thread and I double it over. I just put a small piece so that I can just show you what it's going to look like when we're doing the project. Generally try to use a piece that'll go completely around the pant leg, but it does tend to, it'll bunch up and whatnot. So a smaller piece is a little bit more manageable. The reason I double it over is because when you leave it hanging like this, when you have it like that, and then you just have like a tail, and then you put a knot in this end and just leave this tail here. What happens is that your needle is loose, so to speak, but also when you double it up, then you have double the thread. And when I knot the end, I just roll it around my finger and then roll it between my fingers and then pull it. And it makes a little knot at the end. I don't know if you can see that. Then the needle is secure. It's not going to come out. It's completely caught in the thread. So I don't have to be quite as careful when I'm doing the sewing. So that's the way I like to do it. Everybody's different. But let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to start, I like to start at the inner thigh seam, the inside leg seam. The reason is because that's where you start and end. Of course, in this case, we're not going to end there just because I only made a small piece of thread for you. But we're definitely going to start here. And if it gets a little messy, then it's on the inside of the leg. Not that anybody's ever going to see the outside of the inside leg, the pant leg on the outside. But on the inside, nobody's going to see that anyways. But it's just my, I don't know, just my thought process, I guess. So we're going to go ahead and start here on the inside of the seam. And to start it, I like to hide the knot. So I always kind of come in, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm going to come in underneath the fold over pretty kind of far, just so I could hide that knot underneath it. So it's going to be hiding under there, and you're not going to be able to see it because once I sew, it'll be hidden, just like all those frayed pieces. So the next thing I'm going to do is come down about 1/4 of an inch. In this case, 1/4 of an inch is still here where the seam allowance is on the other piece of fabric. That's okay. We're just going to come underneath that just a little bit, catch the edge of it, and then come up here. I know it's really hard to see because it's black fabric, but I'm just happen to have black pants that I'm doing, so that's why we're doing it with black. So hopefully you can kind of extrapolate what I'm talking about if you can't quite see with the shadows of the black. I do have a very good light on it, an OTT light, which is my favorite for projects and sewing and crafts and whatnot, because it is natural light, emulates natural light. But like I said, black is very, very difficult to see on camera. Your eyes can see it very well, but not so much on camera. All right, so we did one, and we came and made a diagonal stitch. Now, I don't know if you can see that. I'll put the needle underneath so you can kind of see how that shape of that stitch is. So it's coming down diagonally across, and we're just going to keep doing that all the way around. So I'm going to come down another 1/4 of an inch or so, and I'm going to catch just a teeny tiny little bit of the fabric in the back, which is actually the front fabric, and then come through the very edge of the folded over piece. And I'm going to turn it over so you can see what it looks like on the other side. So let's see if you can tell. So right here, let's see, can you see it? There's a teeny little piece of metal. Let me get another needle and see if I can point it out to you. You can kind of see the metal right there. that's where my stitch is going to come through. Now this one's kind of a little bit big, so to speak, bigger than I would normally make. I would want it to be hidden, but I'm trying to, because I'm being so slow and careful, it's harder to be, I don't know, when I go faster, I seem to go make them smaller for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. So I'm just going to pull, and I'm going to make sure to pull it tight, but not overly pull it where it gathers. So now, I don't know if you can see, you probably can't see because it's very, very invisible. It's very, very hidden there because it just matches the fabric, but the stitch is there, and it's securing the pant leg, or securing the hem. So I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to keep going. Let me do another one here. I'm going to catch just a little bit of the fabric on the front and the back, pull it through, and again, it's a diagonal stitch, so 1, 2, 3. You probably can't see them because it's black, but it just comes down in diagonal, and then again on this side you probably can't see it at all. I can't barely see it, only because I know it's there, but I'm using my blind eye to see it, and I still can't see it. So that's what makes it a blind hem. So let me do one more just so you can see what it's, again, in case you couldn't quite see what I was doing. Just going to catch a little bit of the fabric in the back, catch a little bit of the fabric in the front, pull it through carefully so that the thread doesn't twist, and tight enough that it's secure but not so tight that it gathers. Okay, so there we go. We got quite a few. We have about 2 inches of hem there, and then I want to do one more. One more. Let's go through front and back, carefully pulling it tight, not letting it gather. All right, so beautiful. It looks professional. All right, so now what we want to do, of course, we would go all the way around the pant leg, so you need a lot more thread. And if you run out of thread before you get around, it's hard to estimate how much you're going to need. Then you just start again. It's not a big deal. I'm just my brain likes to have it all in one piece of thread, but it doesn't always, I'm not always good enough to get it that way. So when you are out of thread, in this case, I don't have very much left, so I could only probably make a couple stitches anyways. Then you're going to end it. And the way I like to end it is just to come back through the same place in a similar place, just through the top fabric though, not through where it would come through the outside, just through the top fabric, because all I'm going to do is knot it here. I'm not doing any kind of stitching. I'm just ending the thread so that I can start a new piece. So I'm going to bring it through, and then there's this loop here. Can you see that? There's a loop in the fabric. I'm going to put my needle back through that loop, and it doesn't matter where, just anywhere. Just pull it through, and then you're going to pull it up through and tighten it. And what it does is it creates a knot by pulling it through. And then I'm just going to cut it off really close to the edge, and then I'm done right there. So once you're done going all the way around, then you can pull out your pins, and you can see it's very clean, it's secured, and it's blind. And then what you're going to do is iron it again, but this time there's no pin there, so you can get a nice strong iron on there, like you're not going around anything, so you can get a nice clean press right there where the hem is. And then what I usually do, especially if I'm doing something for someone else, is I put them back out, right side out, and then I iron them again, like if I was pressing my pants after doing laundry, and get that edge again once more, but from the outside. And there you go. That's your blind hem. Nice and beautiful, very professional.